When I lived in Tromsø, I was part of the mainstream Christian community. I thought inviting non-Christians to ask me anything about Christianity would be cool, so I put an ad in the local newspaper with my phone number. I had some interesting conversations with people of different faiths through this ad. Most of them were open about being a sinner in need of a savior. However, they were puzzled about how Jesus could be the Son of God if God were one God and not three gods. I've always struggled with this question because I couldn't find a satisfying answer. Comparing it to an egg, a banana, or the sun didn't make sense. It became even more frustrating when I couldn't explain it to others, which meant I couldn't explain it to myself either. I asked my pastor about it, and the response was, "You just have to choose to accept this as truth in faith and not try to understand it intellectually." Then it hit me. I've chosen to believe in the doctrine of the Trinity, but I don't understand it and can't explain it. I've accepted it by faith because someone in authority told me it's true. I can't be sure what I believe is supported by the Bible, but I've decided to believe it anyway. I've gone from being a follower of Jesus to a follower of my denomination. Years later, when I studied theology at Ansgar University College, I learned how the doctrine of the Trinity came into being. To make a long story short, the doctrine of the Trinity was birthed from a very violent and bloody disagreement between factions of bishops in the Roman Catholic Church, where the most violent and those who detested everything Jewish won. So, to discover that mainstream Christianity from year 0 to about year 200 did not believe Jesus was God and did not believe in the Trinity bothered me greatly. When I asked other Christian folks about this, they said the Trinity doctrine was revealed to the church after the Bible was finalized. However, as I read more about the arguments for the Trinity and Jesus' divinity, things got even more confusing. Most people argue that Jesus is both 100% God and 100% man because he says he's the Son of God, claims to be one with God, and only God could atone for the sins of humanity. They also believe that seeing Jesus is the same as seeing God. If we approach the Bible as speaking directly to us as 21st century Christians from various denominations, we can see that all the arguments agree that Jesus is God. The Bible wasn't written for people living in the 21st century. It was initially for Jews, Israelites, and Gentiles who followed Rabbi Yeshua during biblical times in Israel. Their way of life and language were different from ours. Back then, calling someone the Son of God wasn't a big deal because it was commonly used for Israelite kings like David. It didn't mean they were divine. Claiming to be one with God wouldn't have been seen as a big deal either. It would have been more like being a messenger of God. That's why the Pharisees, who saw themselves as messengers of God, got mad at Jesus. The Bible does talk about Jesus atoning for the sins of humanity, but it says it happened in the heavenly temple before the world was created, not at the cross. So, the only way to argue for Jesus' divinity and the Trinity is if you think the Bible was written directly to us. But no serious historian or theologian would say that because we all know we weren't the original audience for the Bible. Once I made this discovery, I could honestly say that I had become a follower of Jesus, not just a follower of my denomination. Jesus never said, "I am God," but he claimed to have a God greater than himself. He also taught his disciples to worship Jehovah, the God of the Old Testament, which they continued to do after the resurrection. The disciples and most Christians participated in the temple rituals as long as the temple stood. Addressing the question of Jesus being the Son of God, despite the belief in God's oneness, the explanation would be that Jesus holds the title of the Messiah, the King of Israel. And this is why he is referred to as the Son of God. Jesus himself stated that God is one, and although this one God can reveal himself in varied manifestations, Jesus is not to be equated with this one God.